something that that will create a talking point. My whole thing is you don't want to create a social touch for the sake of a social touch, because at the end of the day, you might as well just shoot them a templated email or just leave a voicemail.
Right.
Like, don't create a touch point just to create a touch point. Make it meaningful and an engaging conversation. Like, not just, hey, I read this article and I like this part.
Hey everybody, this is Morgan J. Ingram, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you guys sales development leaders, practitioners, people in the space to give you guys more insight, motivation, and advice. And so today I have a colleague of mine, Ryan Shorts, who is very knowledgeable on cultivating relationships through social, using a very personalized approach. So I want to bring him on here today because I've seen his approach firsthand, and he can give you guys some valuable insights on how to really do things right on building relationships, not just social selling, but like this is about building true relationships where you can actually cultivate into acceleration of deals and also get better opportunities for your account executives. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Ryan introduce himself, and we're going to go on the topic of the day.
Morgan, appreciate you having me on. Wanted to kick it off with a topic that is social, on how I got connected with Morgan utilizing social. So I was on LinkedIn one day and saw it was very early stages of the Sales Development Chronicles. Had to have been like episode 10 maybe.
Yeah,
it was super early, and this was during my like heavy consumption of Gary Vee, like 2 videos a day, and stumbled on a video of Gary Vee like about providing value. Through obviously he provides value through various methods and methodologies through content, and I shot Morgan a message and said, hey man, like just saw your Sales Development Chronicle, love what you're doing specifically around providing value to various sales reps using various tactics, and we just got a good back and forth going, and interviewed at Terminus, and the rest is history.
Yeah, so obviously he knows firsthand how to really cultivate those relationships because there's a lot of people who are busy. They get thousands messages a day, and that was really personalized. So we actually generated really good conversation off of that. And I didn't even know who he was. So let's kind of talk about, let's go into the first question, like why are relationships important?
Look, being a sales rep, I mean, thinking about it, like when you're the person on the other end of a phone call or an email, they're receiving that same phone call or same email hundreds of times a day. So how do you make yourself stand out? How do you provide value, or how do you like really build trust? And when I view relationships, I view it as like as trust. How do you establish yourself as credible? And on the other side of that conversation, how does that prospect view the value that you're providing them? If it's just like a template, right? If it's just a blanketed statement that you're providing somebody, you're not really building a relationship. It's just like a quick like, hey, I'm whoever, and this is what I want to give you. Whereas if you start slow and you really say, oh, like I see, like I read the articles that you've posted, or I see that you're a fan of this team or went to this college, and start like a gradual conversation, work your way up.
Yeah.
Once you have that true like deep dive conversation on what they're doing today and the value you can provide to them, it's going to be a more real conversation. It's going to be a longer conversation, more in the weeds, as opposed to Joe Schmo calling out of the blue, and trying to learn more about what they're doing today.
Yeah, and that's definitely really important. That's kind of where I wanted to start off and kind of take a little dive into that as well. So, when you're building those relationships, where is it important to build those relationships, like, and how are you doing that? Is it only through social? Do I need to read some blog posts? Like, I'm confused. What do I do?
Yeah, sure. So lately I've been using multiple channels to not only research prospects, right, but to engage with them. So LinkedIn's obviously like for most sales reps, that's your go-to. The struggle with LinkedIn though is people don't always check their LinkedIn and use LinkedIn, so they can be slow to respond.
Yeah.
And also, like, as you know, you get flooded with LinkedIn messages, so
Yeah.
It's tough to really stand out in a LinkedIn inbox.
Right.
So you, first of all, want to use an engaging subject line if you're shooting somebody a message on LinkedIn. But I found Crunchbase to be pretty successful. Like, if I want to connect with a director of marketing or a VP of marketing, chances are they have some valuable content on Crunchbase about themselves, their journey to get to where they are. and you'll find some good insight onto who they are, like what drives them, how
Right.
they've got to where they are, and utilize that information in your outreach. And obviously, like just typing in the person's name, like what their job title is,
Right.
you'll find some good blog posts and articles that they've either published or been referenced in. So as I begin my Twitter and LinkedIn outreach, I'll reference articles that they've either published or been presented in.
Right.
It's like, hey, I just read this. And the key with presenting articles that you've read or done research on is you don't want to just be like, I read the first paragraph.
Right.
Here you go. Like this is something I picked in the first
Yeah.
paragraph. Actually show that you've read the full article and
Right.
you've taken like actionable knowledge from what they published, because
Right.
that's more meaningful than just saying, hey, saw article 1, sentence 1, this is what you said.
Right.
I mean, guys, like, come on, you literally just pulled it up and referenced that.
So within that article, and you're obviously referencing it, so let's go in the articles because I think those are important. How are you finding these articles? Are you going to their Twitter and seeing if they have a blog? Are you going to LinkedIn and see if they have a blog? And then within those blogs that you're reading, what exactly are you looking for? Are you just looking for something for a talking point, or are you looking for something that is relevant towards your business? Like, how do you really go about that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think there's 2 alleyways you can go there. What I obviously ideally is something that I can make it applicable to my business, kind of parallel what they said into the value I want to provide, in this case through Terminus. But a lot of times it's like thought leadership stuff. Like, for example, I stumbled across an article yesterday about, this guy's a VP of marketing at a software company in the retail space, and he's saying how millennials' attention is shifting from luxury brands to more like rental brands, because luxury brands are obviously at a high premium, high
Right.
cost, and you don't wear them as much, whereas rental brands, you can go and pick and choose various attires and various clothes and switch it out. So I'm paralleling, like, how has the attention shifted in the luxury market in the retail space versus like tech, because he's a VP of marketing at a tech company in the retail space. So
Right.
how has the attention shifted? So parallel to something that that will create a talking point. My whole thing is you don't want to create a social touch for the sake of a social touch, because at the end of the day, you might as well just shoot them a templated email or just leave a voicemail.
Right.
Like, don't create a touch point just to create a touch point. Make it meaningful and an engaging conversation. Like, not just, hey, I read this article and I like this part.
Yeah.
Thanks. Like, all right. I mean,
Cool.
obviously, the person will be like, that's nice of you.
Right.
But I'm gonna be engaged, and I wanna like show you've done your research, then
Right.
ask a question to engage them back.
Yeah.
The jab, right hook.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely super critical, and you kind of talked about how you're looking at people's socials, and you're not just saying like, "Hey, look, like this is it," like I'm gonna give you some vague things. So, kind of talk about how not to be vague, and how just following someone on Twitter isn't enough. Like, you got to do more than that.
Yeah, it's not enough because, I mean, for example, like, I'm no Twitter guru,
Right.
but when someone follows me on Twitter, unless it's somebody I know,
Yeah.
chances are I'm not checking out their Twitter feed.
Right.
It's just like one of those random profiles.
Yeah.
So how do you stand out from the noise? You follow, you like, and you reply.
Right.
Follow, like, reply. It's a 3-step process. So follow the person, like something they've posted, whether it's recently or within the past month, and then reply to something that they published that
Right.
that got your attention. For example, I had a prospect that tweeted about using Slack in the
Yeah.
interview process, which I'm like, what?
Yeah.
We use Slack here, but
Yeah.
in the interview process,
Yeah, it's
super
crazy.
interesting article.
Yeah.
So basically, what they do is instead of just doing like a phone screening your first email,
Yeah.
or phone screening your first step in the interview process, they have an interviewee have a Slack conversation with various reps within the company.
Okay.
So those reps will ask the interviewee questions, and then they'll have a allotted amount of time to reply to these employees at the company. And I thought that was really interesting. So to create a conversation, I asked that person, hey, this is really interesting. I've never thought about using Slack in this form of like using it in an interview process. How have you noticed step 2 when that person comes in for an in-person interview? How have you noticed that change? And boom, like, person engages.
Yeah.
Because that's showing that I read the article, what caught my eye, and how is that changing internally? So it's making it real for the person,
Right.
which is the most important thing.
Yeah, and just talk about how'd you come up with that method of the follow, like, reply? Like, was that something that you just tested out, A/B tested over
Yeah.
time, or was it something you found? Like, how did you figure that out?
I just kind of So one video that I know Morgan and I have talked about a bunch with Gary Vee is sliding in the DM.
Oh yeah, that's one of his best.
It's his best video in my mind
video,
because it's super practical. I kind of like modeled it a little bit after that. I'm not on Instagram, to be honest with you. My friends give me a hard time about it too. It's I probably should get on Instagram. So I kind of followed a similar method on how he reaches out to people he would want to do business with, right? So it starts with a slow, methodical approach of, hey, I see you're doing this. Like, say it's a fitness guru.
Mhm.
I mean, they have like 20,000 followers, and they
Yeah.
live in Atlanta because that's where we are, and they're publishing stuff about how to get the most out of your chest workout.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I've been following your channel. I see what you're posting about this type of workout,
Right.
and I'm seeing huge results. Like, keep up the great work.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so how can I mirror like a similar approach to like compliment, and then ask?
Right.
So on Twitter, it's like follow, like, engage, and
Right.
then ask.
Right.
So it's truly a palms up approach. Like, I want to learn about you before I even ask for anything, or before I even ask for time to learn more about your strategy today or what you're doing internally.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the foundation of how I started that. And like you said, it is kind of an A/B test. You got to see what works. What works for one prospect is not going to work for the next.
Right.
You got to be flexible and adapt, because not everyone really is active on Twitter. So got to find those channels that that prospect is utilizing the most.
Yeah, and are you just like you talked about Twitter a lot, LinkedIn? How are you connecting people? Are you just sharing articles? Are you hopping just in the in-mail? Like, how do you build that relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on LinkedIn, a lot of times you can see, if you look over on their activity history, you can see what they've published or what they've liked.
Okay,
and that's huge. It doesn't show up for everybody, but on prospects where it does show, that's something that you definitely want to utilize, especially if they shared something about your company, because that's an immediate indicator that they have some interest, either the space that you're playing in or what your company is doing. So for me specifically, when I want to engage with a prospect, I will connect and then send them a personalized invitation.
Okay.
And then hopefully once they accept that invitation, they've published some articles that I can reference to them. Like, I'll like an article and even shoot them a message like, hey, I just read this article. And like we mentioned on Twitter, like, show that you actually read it and what caught your eye, and then ask them a question to create some back and forth.
Cool.
Just like I shot you a message when we first got connected about Gary Vee, and naturally you were a huge fan as well, and that just created rapport and created a natural conversation. Yeah, and let's get talk about practicality.
Let's get really practical here. So I know that you've been doing a lot of stuff with social. You've been very active in it. You've been A/B testing a lot of stuff, and because you're deep in the weeds, you're being a practitioner. Kind of share a success story of you actually using this method through Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah. So a prospect was tweeting. He is like an online journalist basically, and wrote an article stating like the journalist is not dead basically, and engaging with this guy, he posts articles and pretty thought-provoking articles specifically in the tech space about journaling. I would say like once a week, and this guy's Twitter feed is super active. So anytime you see someone with a very active Twitter feed and you engage with them, there's going to be a higher propensity that they will reply to you. So that's a green light for me.
Yeah.
So followed the prospect, liked a few of his posts, then shot him a reply to one of his posts and said, hey, great article, I enjoyed reading, X, Y, and Z. I'm curious to know, what channels do you find most successful in content distribution? He goes and defines that. Awesome. Now shifting to an account-based marketing approach, what do you find? How do you find value in that strategy?
Right.
So to start, I'm inquiring about an article he posted and content that he's deep in the weeds in, distribution he's deep in the weeds in every single day to get more viewers, get more engagement on his post. And then I start shifting gradually to, okay, now I want to talk about account-based marketing. And he immediately replies, from an outbound strategy of account-based marketing, these are the channels you want to play in. Okay, awesome. Like, that's a great answer. What, in your mind, is like the biggest pain point for account-based marketing?
Right.
So what I did there was I referenced an article that he published, something that he's clearly has passion about and interest in, start shifting to account-based marketing, what
Right.
Terminus does, and then find his pain point immediately. And I couldn't find the guy's email address. I wanted to shoot him a quick email to thank him for engaging with me on Twitter. That's normally my second step after someone engages with me on Twitter, is to shoot them an email and just thank them, and state, why I was engaging with them in the first place. And I called him on the phone. He had his phone number on his LinkedIn, which is very rare, as you know.
Yeah, very
You
rare.
just don't get that a lot.
Just don't get a lot.
And we had a great conversation, talked for 8 minutes, and the conversation right off the bat was warmer than any conversation I've previously had.
Yeah.
And this was when I just started doing the social outreach. And we talked probably for 8 minutes, which is, I would normally like to get pretty deep into the weeds on the phone with prospects, as you know. That was a little bit standard for me, but it was very warm off the bat, and I thanked him for engaging with me on Twitter, and he was obviously very appreciative of
Right.
the back and forth and the exchange and the nice words about his article. And then we started getting to talking about account-based marketing. What are they doing today from a strategic execution standpoint? Do they even have outbound marketing? Are they strictly an inbound engine?
Yeah.
So we started getting to talking, and I already really knew the pain points because what he unveiled over Twitter, and I knew where I wanted to steer the conversation, and it was like such a natural flow. Normally it's like, okay, I'm talking to a prospect, it's a complete cold call.
Right.
You can go down a variety of alleyways,
Right.
but I knew exactly where I wanted to steer it. Great call with the guy. Took an introductory phone call with one of our account executives, and that deal is moving pretty fast
Right.
through the pipeline right now, faster than a normal cold type outreach that
Right.
with the prospect.
Right, and that leads to like relationship building, because obviously you've gained that, maybe that trust already, right? That trust, that likeness, I would more so say, with that prospect, and they're now they're more in tune to listening to your demo than someone else's demo that set up. That probably wasn't the same process.
Right.
So I think that, like, with that process, I think that's kind of where everything kind of shifts, because it's like, now it's like, hey, look, I'm actually invested into it. I'm putting more work into it, and because you're putting more work into it, it's now going to move a little bit quicker, the sales cycle. And so through those relationships that you're building, when that email comes out or that phone call comes out, you're having better conversations.
Right.
You're not
absolutely.
like pulling teeth. It's like, hey, look, I've actually had a conversation with this person. We chat a little bit, and that's why it's cultivating that way.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. Like, relationships are everything in sales, and it's funny because the type of outreach I'm doing, I parallel that to what we do here at Terminus, and not to pitch us, but obviously we play in the
Right.
display advertising space,
Right.
and brand awareness is extremely important
Right.
when you're a sales member trying to engage with a prospect
Right,
and
right.
convert on a prospect.
Yeah.
Using social and multiple channels increases your brand awareness naturally, because they're going to see your name. They're going to see the content that you're trying to connect with them on.
Right.
So once you have that first conversation, it's naturally going to be warmer and ideally go the way you want it to.
Right. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, guys. It's going to go the way you want it to. It's going to promote more of what you're doing, and that's like the biggest key at the end of the day. And I think that's the most crucial thing, right? So talk a little bit more about, I know you use video. Has that helped you kind of generate those relationships as well?
Yeah, video's been huge for me. And the key with being in sales development, or really any type of sales role, is find what you're
Right.
best at. Maximize on your strengths.
Yeah.
Gary Vee says, like, don't focus on your weaknesses, double down on your strengths.
Right.
So my strengths are video, phone, lately social, and emails. Like, not my best, to be honest with you, but I'm all right. I definitely try to focus more so on
Right.
video and phone.
Right.
Video's been huge for me. One of which is, people get their inbox flooded every single day.
Right.
So how do you stand out from the noise? How do you be unique? Needle in a haystack.
Right.
If you're sending someone a video versus just a bunch of text, they're gonna click on it. It's just more interesting.
Right.
As long as you like show it's not some spammy video.
Yeah,
You have their LinkedIn pulled up
Right.
as you're making the video. That's been huge for me. One of which is, I get an opportunity within a minute to 2 minutes to quickly display how I found them. I found them on LinkedIn and doing research on company X. What about their LinkedIn stood out to me? What about their skills that they've acquired over the years, success they've seen in the field, and then go to the next page, next tab, which would be their company page.
Right.
What about their company engage with me? Like, what am I looking for? Oh, like their customer base. I see you're targeting these various industries, clearly have a specific target market, and like healthcare, financial services, blah, blah, blah. And then position the value of Terminus. What can we bring to your team? Not just to this pitch for the sake of pitching, like make it real for them so they can visualize Terminus will help us penetrate these accounts in these industries. And it's just a much more engaging way to get your company and yourself out there with a prospect versus writing that in the text.
Right.
Because it's long and people normally don't like reading long emails.
Right, yeah, no, they don't. So I think that's the biggest thing is the video generates that humanity, right? Like it's like, oh, this is a real person, and I'm actually able to build that relationship with that person over time. Because I think that the biggest thing, at least in a sales development role, is to build up the relationship as fast as possible, so that person believes in the value that you're selling them, and then obviously converting that to the account executive.
Yeah, and what I love about video is you can mess up. And it's totally natural.
Right.
Like we're humans. You don't want to be a robot having some script just like, hey, I made you this personalized. Like, that's so boring. Like, who wants to watch that?
Sally, I made you this personalized video.
No one wants to watch that.
Nobody wants to see that.
And it, like, I love like stumbling over my words on a video because it's real. And I'll like laugh it off because it's okay. I mean, like you're on the phone with someone, if you fumble over your words and you laugh it off, like, all right, this guy's a human or this girl's a human. I get sales reps calling me all the time, and it's just a robotic pitch they're giving me every time.
Yeah.
So, like you said, video is so humanized, and that's what I love about it, and it's different. It's very different. I think it's the future. I know you probably share a similar sentiment that video is where a lot of organizations are going to go to.
I think so. I think we're already seeing it. I mean, I think when I first used video, it was like way back in the day, and people were
you were the pioneer of it.
And people were like, what is going on? They're like,
what is this guy doing right now?
But I knew that, hey, look, it's just different and unique, and if I can at least share my energy in the first 5 to 10 seconds and get that person excited, then they'll actually listen to what I have to say, that in an email that they may have seen 1,000 times or a phone call that they keep getting. So I think building relationships, like obviously like there's ways to do it, but there's also like more special ways to do it, like actually doing better at the end of the day. And like I think that's really where it cultivates the next level.
Yeah, like you said, there's multiple channels to build a relationship. There's social, there's phone, there's email, there's video. And when Morgan was first doing video, like, oh, that's really cool. This is so different. Like, I've never seen anything like this. And then once other team members started adapting, like, oh, like I want to try this, and then master the craft, you get real conversions. And quality conversions too.
I mean, a lot of people have. I would say there was like a ton of accounts that I would go after. I've been emailing them for 5 to 6 months. They wouldn't respond, and then I sent a video, and like the game changed, right? So I think that's another perspective as well.
Yeah, and I've noticed that firsthand. Like accounts that haven't been reached out to in a few months, and I start this type of outreach where I'm engaging with them on social, on Twitter, LinkedIn, and then send them a personalized video. And I don't even ask for anything in my first video, just to be transparent with you guys. Like a lot of people are like immediately asking for time. How can I get 20 to 30 minutes on your calendar? Like stand out, like do something different. Like this is why I believe in this strategy for your business. And then they're bought in. They see me engaging on Twitter and LinkedIn, and they I'm clearly giving them content. So it's a true jab. Then the right hook comes later when I say, this is what Terminus can do for your team. Let's connect for 20 to 30 minutes to learn more about this. So it's truly a jab, right hook process in which you're distributing insightful, valuable content to the prospect to educate them so they can learn more. And then eventually, once they're fully bought into your outreach, then you ask for time. I just think too many sales reps are asking for time immediately.
So you're saying don't ask for time?
I don't like asking for time right off the bat. I mean, if they're bought in right away, like, hey, let's do this thing. Let's do I would love to set up some time with you. But I think too many sales reps are just focused on the micro, like, how can I get this right now? Whereas if you slow play it and gradually warm up the prospect to the idea of having a brief conversation, high propensity to convert. I think 100%.
Because like building relationships is a long-term thing, not a short-term thing.
It's a long-term play, and it's a trust thing that we talked about earlier. Like, it's all trust. Like, show you've done your research. Show you want to provide them value and insight that will make them more successful at their job. Once they're bought into that, ask for time. Because it's quality over quantity. 100%.
Yeah, I love that. And Ryan, I really appreciate all the value that you've given today. It's really been insightful. I know a lot of people will gain a lot of insight from this, and they'll be like, this is some really cool stuff that you're talking about. So the question I ask every single guest that comes on the show, what's your number one piece of advice for SDRs as they enter into their new role?
Number one piece of advice. This is interesting. My best piece of advice is learn everything you can, not only about your business, but the field in which you're playing in. Truly become immersed in the problem that you guys are trying to solve. Because if you aren't a credible resource,
Right.
when you're having a conversation with a prospect, if they ask you a question that you truly don't know the answer to,
Right.
I mean, that's a red flag.
Right.
So I think it's really, really important to immerse yourself in the problem that your company is trying to solve.
Right.
And then obviously learn about competitors. That's it. That's a number two.
Cool.
Learn everything you can. What do you provide that your competitors don't?
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, it was fantastic having you, Ryan. Guys, as I always say, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, man.